On an island, there was a man named Wasio who used to teach some monsters how to make snow using magic. He would often encourage them, saying that with practice they could master it too. One day, a monster with an octopus-like appearance approached Wasio and said she wanted to become a human when she grew up. Blushing, she confessed that she planned to marry Wasio in the future. This made the other monsters upset, as they also wanted to marry their teacher. Wasio started to wonder if marrying him was the real reason the octopus-like monster wanted to become human. She explained that she felt different from humans because of her 8 arms and many suction cups. Thinking Wasio might find her disgusting, she became sad and cried, fearing he would come to hate her. To her surprise, Wasio picked her up and reassured her. He disagreed with her assumption and with a smile told all the monsters something important. In another time and place, there was a school called Munis Inium Real Academy in the Kingdom of Medium. Some exhausted students were heading home when one of them accidentally collided with a male teacher. The man quickly apologized, but a female student overreacted. The girls hurried away, expressing their disgust because they had bumped into old Wasio, who had an old man's smell. Wasio sighed, feeling a bit hurt by the fact that everyone had given him a nickname and accused him of being smelly. A girl walked into the school with a suitcase. She looked around and Wasio couldn't help but admire her beauty. He caught himself thinking about something inappropriate and slapped himself. It was the first time Wasio had seen her and he wondered why she had a suitcase. Curious, he asked if she needed help finding her classroom. The girl was surprised, smiled, and gave him a tight hug. Feeling awkward and assuming it was a prank, Wasio asked her to let go. Other students looked at him disapprovingly. The girl, realizing the misunderstanding, backed off and explained that she was looking for the head teacher's office. She had forgotten her school map and asked Wasio for directions. Despite feeling flustered, Wasio guided her to the office and reminded her about the map in the student ID book. The girl opened her luggage and started crying when she saw she had the wrong one. She got really worried because she forgot to bring her books. Wasio knelt down and reassured her that it's normal to make mistakes when you're in a rush. He told her to stay calm so they could fix it. The girl felt grateful and thanked Wasio. He also mentioned she could replace her lost ID book. The girl remembered his advice about staying calm to avoid mistakes. Wasio said it was something he learned from his past experiences as an office worker. He chuckled as he reminisced about his old job, but then he got quiet, lost in thought. The girl didn't understand a word he said and Wasio quickly changed the subject, trying to leave. She watched him go, feeling disappointed that he didn't seem to notice how she felt. Later, in the busy teacher's room, an elf teacher rubbed some papers on Wasio's head, instructing him to fix the questionnaires. Wasio then informed the elf Limnoa that he was going to be busy cleaning the residences. Limnoa advised him to come up with a better excuse next time. He kept saying that odd jobs suited Wasio, unlike himself, who attended the Louvre Division of Magical Studies as a consultant and effortlessly won a tournament. Wasio just scratched his head and exclaimed how it was an honor to help someone as talented as Limnoa. The elf glared at Wasio, laughed, and left, calling him a miserable man. That evening, Wasio trudged home feeling exhausted and hungry. He went past a loud tavern, glanced at it, but chose to keep walking since he had no money. He walked in quietness until he arrived home. Surprisingly, the housekeeper greeted him warmly and offered some leftover dinner. Wasio said sorry for the trouble. The housekeeper then advised Wasio to find a wife who could cook delicious food for him. Wasio chuckled, saying that as a low-ranking teacher, it wasn't likely. The housekeeper agreed and went away. Wasio felt depressed and silently went to his room. He entered his untidy room, sat down and took a few bites of the food he had just received. He lay there quietly, reflecting on what the housekeeper had said. He decided to take a shower to clear his mind and remembered how, 10 years ago, he used to work in an office with no prospects for the future. Back then, he didn't have a girlfriend. And one day, while reading a book of famous quotes on his way home, he unexpectedly got summoned to another world. He was hailed as a hero from a different world, gifted with magical abilities. However, he was conflicted with his mission when he realized that monsters were also living beings. Despite trying to save them, the monsters got caught and used for experiments. Wasio opens his eyes, having dreamt such a nightmare. He gasps for air, recalling how he couldn't meet everyone's expectations and ended up as a regular teacher at Real Academy. He starts a new life in a new world, but hasn't achieved anything incredible or the harem he always dreamed of. He's just an old man who can use a bit of magic. As he smokes, he remembers the times when he taught some young monsters. He smiles, thinking about the fun he had with them, and decides to go to sleep. The following morning, Wasio made it to school on time, and Limnoa teased him about having an old man's smell. The principal then announced that a monster girl would be joining the school, leaving Wasio puzzled. Limnoa assumed that someone like Wasio might not be familiar with monster girls and went on to explain. He shared that monster girls, with their various mutant species, were considered to have superior intelligence compared to elves. Despite originally being monsters, they took on a human appearance, especially resembling young human girls with beautiful looks. Limnoa pointed out their exceptional physical abilities and mentioned that not much was known about them since only a few existed. Wasio complimented Limnoa's knowledge, but the elf dismissed it as common information, reminding Wasio that as a biology teacher, he should be familiar with such things. Nervously, Wasio smiled and claimed he specialized in lower-ranking monsters. Limnoa continued by explaining that due to these mutated monsters, the government and military officers had promised them a good future as part of the elite. The door opened, and Limnoa was surprised to see a monster girl joining their school. The school director introduced the newcomer, revealing it to be the lost girl Wasio had bumped into the day before. The girl Claudia from the Kraken species introduced herself. All the teachers were keenly observing her, particularly her face and overall well-being. Wasio quickly identified her as the lost girl. The school director then explained that during Claudia's first week she would receive guidance from a teacher after completing a comprehensive exam. However, Claudia exclaimed that she had already chosen a teacher. She walked past some teachers and stopped in front of someone, telling them that it had been a long time. She extended her tentacles in front of Wasio and smiled. However, Wasio, who was just freaked out, didn't say anything back as a response. Claudia was disappointed that Wasio hadn't realized it yet, and Wasio claimed he didn't know any monster girls. Just then, Wasio recalled an octopus girl from the time when he was teaching young monsters. Claudia then said it had been a long time since she last saw Wasio. In the past, Wasio had saved her and reached out to her tentacles. However, right now, he could hold her human hands. Claudia reminded him about the time when Wasio saved her. She smiled and told Wasio that she had finally become a monster girl. Of course, we all know her goal. A few days later, Wasio was running late for work again and had just left his apartment. Suddenly, someone called out his name. It was Claudia. She offered him a ride and wrapped her tentacle around his arm. Claudia sprinted like Usain Bolt while Wasio tried to keep up, waving behind her. Later in the classroom, Wasio thanked Claudia. It was the first time he'd been early all month. Claudia promised to give him rides every morning. Wasio couldn't believe he was suddenly in charge of the creature he'd saved before. The next day, Wasio was happy to see the octopus-like creature had transformed into a monster girl, unrecognizable from before. Claudia praised him, but Wasio just laughed. Other teachers protested, saying it wasn't fair to decide things this way. However, the school director gave 2 thumbs up, approving of Wasio. Claudia felt relieved that decisions had been made. Limnoa stepped forward and proudly declared that as a ranked A teacher, he was more suitable than a ranked E teacher like him. Claudia politely declined and asked Limnoa not to address her as Wasio-sensei, based on her rank, as it was impolite. Limnoa was left speechless and the other teachers chuckled at his expense. Wasio worried that he might have upset Limnoa. Claudia noticed his concern and inquired about it. Wasio brushed it off, claiming it was nothing, and then asked how Claudia's first 3 days at school had been. Claudia happily shared that the classes were enjoyable, especially Wasio's biology class. Wasio was pleased to hear that, but quickly changed the subject and handed Claudia a form regarding her future. He expressed his belief that someone as talented as Claudia had a bright future ahead, particularly as a monster girl. He assured her she could easily rise to become a high-ranking officer. Claudia held her hands tightly on her thighs and pondered if she truly had no other option. She then admitted something that her classmates had mentioned to her. They kept urging her to recommend them to the king's department once she got in because she was a monster girl and they hoped to use her connections. She said even the teachers had hinted at the same thing. They told her she was a student with great potential and deserved an education at that level. She questioned if she really had to meet everyone's expectations and go through with it. Wasio was too shocked to respond until he advised her not to seek advice from someone like him and suggested asking a more qualified teacher instead. Claudia sadly gazed at him and reminded him that he was her designated teacher. Wasio couldn't say anything more and left the room. Claudia was clearly upset. During lunchtime, Wasio went to get a simple menu, and Claudia wondered if it would be enough for him. She reminded him that not eating well was bad for the body. Wasio said he was broke. Claudia then showed her form, saying she had finished it. However, someone grabbed it from her and surprisingly, it was Limnoa. He crumpled the form when he discovered that a monster girl was only planning to become a teacher. He told her to reconsider because she was a monster girl who should aspire to something greater. Claudia was scared and speechless. Wasio then stepped in and said that a teacher should respect a student's decisions and dreams. Limnoa snapped, smacking Wasio's food tray to the ground and saying it would be a great loss for the world. Everyone wondered if the 2 teachers were fighting. Limnoa said that someone talented like him should be in charge of Claudia, who was also talented. With his weak heart, Wasio agreed with Limnoa's words. The elf continued to scold Wasio and ordered him to request a change from the director. Just then, Limnoa let out a surprised shriek as a tentacle tapped his cheek. He turned around and spotted Claudia, who was asking him to stop bothering Wasio. She talked about how Wasio had been an amazing teacher, always supporting her dreams from the beginning. Back when she was disliked by everyone, Wasio had advised her to know herself. Everyone around them, especially Limnoa, was puzzled by what Claudia meant, because it was an unfamiliar phrase to them. Claudia explained that it was something Wasio had told her a long time ago. She had been told to discover her own strengths and use them to her advantage. Wasio stopped for a moment, remembering when he used to teach small creatures. There was a time when Claudia dreamed of becoming human so she could marry Wasio, even though she worried people might dislike her because of her looks. Wasio lifted her spirits by sharing a phrase he loved: know yourself. He encouraged Claudia to discover her unique talents before feeling jealous of others. He urged her to focus on honing her own skills and finding happiness within herself. The little octopus blushed with embarrassment. Wasio explained that his advice was just his personal take on the phrase. He assured Claudia that he supported her dream of becoming human and would help her however he could. That simple sentence had helped Claudia fulfill her dreams, and she could clearly remember Wasio and his words all this time. Wasio was happy to see the little octopus evolve into a monster girl. Claudia said it was Wasio who had made her realize her good abilities and exclaimed that only he could be her teacher in charge. Limnoa still couldn't accept it and tried to say something. However, the other students agreed that Wasio should just do it. Despite looking old and gross, they knew that Wasio was not useless, just like how Limnoa was claiming. They then continued talking about how annoying Limnoa was, like he knew everything in this world and didn't respect a student's wishes. Wasio noticed Limnoa trembling and he realized that Limnoa was crying. Feeling embarrassed, Limnoa hurriedly ran away, blurting out a line as if he were a member of Team Rocket. Wasio felt dazed by the sudden turn of events. Claudia suggested they should grab more food. Seeing how mature the little octopus was, Wasio couldn't help but feel proud that Claudia had dreams of becoming a teacher. He felt happy about what he was doing and realized that he had forgotten something as simple as that. Remembering the past and the phrase he had told Claudia, Wasio couldn't help but laugh as he realized that the phrase had come back to him like a boomerang. It made Wasio realize that being a teacher was a good thing. The two then stopped in front of the food stall, and the touching moment was interrupted by Wasio, who was borrowing money from a student. Shortly after, during Wasio's biology class, Wasio talked about how Claudia could use poison, powerful magic, and inhuman strength. Claudia showed her strength by crushing a huge boulder with a single tentacle. The class ended, and the students were amazed by Claudia despite her cute and fragile appearance. They were surprised to see more students attending the biology class lately. Wasio said sorry to Claudia for any inconvenience, but the monster girl was glad to help him since she wanted to be with him. Wasio told her to stop joking around, but Claudia ignored him and reached for the chalk writings on the higher part of the board. Wasio was shocked that Claudia could reach so high, but she said that what she showed was her limit. Wasio remarked on how useful the tentacle was and quickly apologized, sensing that his comment might have sounded insulting. However, Claudia took the opportunity to playfully tease Wasio about how useful it had been. She showed off its abilities, mentioning how it could stretch, shrink, bend, and was strong enough to crush a boulder. Wrapping her tentacles around Wasio, she jokingly touched him, claiming it was like giving a massage. She admitted she had worked as a masseuse for a while after they separated and had a good reputation for it. Wasio was impressed and complimented her skills, dropping to the ground. Claudia then suggested trying a different kind of massage. Slowly, she moved her tentacles a bit lower and slipped them into Wasio's pants. As Wasio began to pant, Claudia stopped and said she was only joking, wondering if she had made Wasio nervous. Wasio looked disappointed for some reason. Claudia mentioned she was still 16 in human years and was trying to charm Wasio. The school bell rang and Wasio said the next class was about to start. Claudia pouted in disappointment since she wanted to spend more time with Wasio, but feeling hungry, she went out to get lunch. As she left, Wasio slumped onto the teacher's podium desk, realizing how his heart had almost dropped. Meanwhile, Claudia still found it difficult to be charming. When the bell rang again, she hurried off somewhere. Outside the school, a carriage stopped and a girl stepped out of it. The girl, dressed simply and with a pure look, wondered if Wasio still remembered her. By the way, Wasio had a nightmare involving tentacles that night. Later that day, Wasio emerged from the school building, appearing happy and refreshed. It was a rare occurrence for him to feel this way, almost like a miracle. As he walked away, someone called out to him and a girl hugged him from behind. Wasio suddenly stepped back, feeling something soft against his back. It was the same girl who had exited the carriage earlier. She mentioned it had been a long time, but Wasio didn't recognize her at all. The girl acknowledged that she looked different now, having changed a lot. Then she lifted her skirt in front of Wasio, who became nervous. Spider legs emerged from underneath her skirt as she introduced herself as the Spider Wasio from the past. It was evident that she had also transformed into a monster girl. Wasio wondered if she truly was the little spider from back then. Shortly after, Wasio and the girl went to a tavern. The girl was amazed when they arrived at a small restaurant with a broken chandelier. They were shown to their seats and the girl wondered if the dirty barrel was meant for sitting. The tavern owner became upset, but Wasio apologized. The owner forgave him and tried to be understanding since it was Wasio's first time bringing a girl. Before long, they had a meal, and the girl enjoyed some meat and vegetables on skewers. She found it tasty despite the meat appearing dry. Wasio became concerned because the spider girl was criticizing the restaurant. The girl explained she was just sharing her opinion. Since Wasio was still using a nickname for her, the girl introduced herself as Arya. Those nearby admired her name, just as they admired Arya's beauty. Wasio couldn't believe that the timid little spider who always hid in the corner of the classroom had evolved into a monster girl. Arya said those were tough times but appreciated Wasio's encouragement. Wasio was puzzled by her remark. Arya remembered that Wasio was still teaching and wondered what kind of influence he had on his students. Wasio admitted he was now a biology teacher. Arya was surprised, knowing Wasio had more potential. Wasio said it was okay because circumstances had changed. Arya noticed Wasio's sadness and wondered if that was true. Wasio then changed the topic and asked Arya if she remembered the little octopus from before. Arya could only remember it as a naive creature. Wasio then told her that the little octopus was now named Claudia. He mentioned that Claudia had become a monster girl like him and was also his student. He was happy that Claudia admired him, but he found their relationship a bit strange. Wasio went on to talk about how clingy Claudia still was, just like when she was little. While Wasio talked, Arya started to get increasingly irritated. She asked the tavern owner for the most expensive menu and beer. Wasio was shocked by Arya's sudden change in demeanor. Even the other customers were surprised. Their meal had ended, and Arya started to wonder if it was okay for Wasio to pay for everything. Wasio laughed and said he could survive on bread for a week. Then he offered to walk Arya home, but her carriage arrived just in time. Wasio realized Arya must be wealthy. Before she boarded the carriage, Arya hugged Wasio and expressed her hope to see him again, telling him how happy she was to meet him once more. Wasio smiled proudly and watched her leave. As the carriage departed, Arya found herself giggling, her spider legs extending out. She couldn't believe she had finally achieved her dream of hugging her teacher with human hands. But her mood shifted when she remembered Wasio happily mentioning Claudia. She felt a pang of jealousy that Wasio was talking about another girl in her presence. Then she noticed a wrapped gift beside her and realized she had forgotten to give it to Wasio. Determined to catch up with him, she made up her mind. In the meantime, Claudia went back into the classroom looking for Wasio, where a student informs her that he's gone with a beautiful black-haired girl, surprising Claudia. Arya had gone back to where she had last seen Wasio, but he wasn't there. Feeling worried, she decided to wait until the next day to look for him in class. Suddenly, she heard people yelling about a fire at the church. Arya rushed over and saw flames engulfing the building. People were frantic, searching for doctors to help the burn victims. Outside, children were crying and a nun pleaded to be allowed back inside because there was still a child trapped within. Arya asked the nun if it was true, and the nun explained how the children had been playing with a candle while she was out buying food. She begged for help, and Arya promised to take care of it. A man had tried to stop her, but Arya went inside the burning church anyway. Everything inside was engulfed in flames. Arya's water magic skills were a bit rusty, so she hurried to find the child. She searched through the rooms, shouting that she had come to help. Arya kept looking around until she heard someone coughing. She walked over to a nearby bookshelf and found the unconscious child trapped on it. Using her spider-like legs, she destroyed the bookshelf and lifted the child, reassuring him that everything was going to be okay. However, a fiery section of the ceiling began to crack, catching Arya's attention. She spotted it just in time. She thought about using lightning magic to obliterate everything, but that would also harm the unconscious child nearby. As the debris fell, someone swiftly slipped a ring onto their finger and a portal cracked open, revealing a demonic hand emerging from it. A demon-like creature emerged fully, and Wasio cast a spell called World Over Water. With the summoned creature's help, Wasio used water magic to create a protective bubble around Arya and the child. Arya's eyes widened. It had been ages since she last witnessed Wasio's magic. She realized that Wasio's power was as potent as ever. Then she corrected herself. It was the magic of the kingdom's highest-ranked magician, known as the Golden Eagle. Wasio chuckled, correcting her that he was now a biology teacher, and his hand suddenly began to ache. He was feeling the effects of aging. That is the end of the recap for now. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.